Hola, soy Dora.
Hola, soy Diego. Can you count how many mistakes there are in this portrait? Hello, everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about the mistakes that I find myself and a lot of other people make the most when you are trying to draw a face. A face tends to be the most difficult thing to draw because faces are really the number one thing that you have trained yourself to understand the most ever since you were a baby. That's why babies stare at you all the time, right? They're trying to understand your face and recognize your expressions. That's why even toddlers will always look to their parents to see how they should react to a certain event that happened. They're trying to see what expression should I be making here so that I can know what emotion to feel. There's not a single thing on this planet that you are more accustomed to understanding visually than the human face. So therefore, it is the most difficult thing to draw because you have the most amount of unlearning to do. To be able to draw a face properly, you basically have to unlearn everything you've learned and then consciously rebuild how a face and a head works in your mind. Even now, with all of these different illustrations I've made, I still find myself making a lot of mistakes, but I have isolated them to 8, and we're going to go through them here. We're going to some stuff that's pretty easy to spot and some stuff that's difficult to spot. And then I'm going to give you 3 general tips to help you spot these mistakes as you're drawing, as well as some advice to get used to your own natural biases. So let's go ahead and get started. I have taken the liberty of drawing these 3 beautiful women here, and we're going to bring up the references that I used right here. And I made lots of mistakes, corrected them, and then I went backwards to exaggerate the mistakes so that I could see if you could spot the differences. Now, I did say I exaggerated them, but I also made them pretty subtle because that's how this stuff works. It's not going to be that easy to figure out which mistake is which, especially if you make more than one of them. So let's go with this woman here first. Let's zoom in a bit more and I'll turn on the hints layer so that you can get an idea here. There are 2 main mistakes in this portrait. The first one is one of the most easy to spot, and that is making one or multiple of the features too big or too small. The eye was too big. This is something that you will likely do if you are drawing a character from a 3/4 view, because the closer an object is to the viewer, the bigger it will appear. However, we're not that close to her in the reference. The difference between the distance from us to this eye and that eye is not very much, so they're going to be the same size. In reality, what we're going to do here is on the mistakes layer, I'm going to go ahead, get my eraser, and we're going to correct that. Like so, right? The next mistake, if you caught it, is the mouth. Now, we're going to be skipping around here, but this is a much more challenging mistake to detect. It's not just that it's bigger or smaller, right? It looks a little bit different, and you can see the corrected version that's displaying now is more accurate to the reference. So what's the difference here? The difference is that I drew this mouth in a different perspective. To help with this, I'm going to label the mistakes that we corrected. I'm just going to write a number 1 because that's the first type of mistake. For the mouth, the way we drew it at the wrong perspective, this is actually number 7. It's one of the most difficult mistakes to notice and correct because it requires a much better understanding of 3D space and form. So I'm going to try to diagram that a little bit better for you here. So if we look at her face, she is facing this direction. But what I did is that I drew the mouth as if it's facing this way, right? This is a common thing that I find I do and a lot of other artists do. Instead of drawing the mouth or any feature at the correct perspective where it needs to be at this angle instead of like this facing directly towards us, right? If I do a cross section, it would look like that versus like that. This is the correct one. This is the incorrect one. We tend to flatten it because we understand what a face looks like when it's facing us directly, but we don't really understand what happens when we turn unless we've studied it. So it's very easy to draw the mouth how I understand it instead of how it's actually facing. I'm going to correct it and show you how it's supposed to look. So I'll go ahead and erase it. What happened is we see less of this side because it's further away from us. Right? We see more of this side. It's the same thing with the eyes. The eyes are the same size, but we see more of this eye because it's closer to us than we see of this one, right? And that's why it's especially easier to make the eye that's closer to you a lot bigger when you're drawing portraits at an angle, because you will easily think that, oh, it should be bigger. It feels more natural, but you really have to take the time and try to compare, okay, are they really the same size? You will see me do this sometimes. I will go ahead and draw a line like this, and you can see the exact point where the eye shows, the whites of the eye shows, lines up with the other eye, which means that they're the same size. So that wasn't too bad. We only made 2 mistakes on this portrait. Now let's move on to this one. This is a little bit trickier. There's a lot more mistakes on here. I'm going to give you some time here to guess. So now I'm going to show you the hints layer, and we're going to see how many mistakes there are. 1 mistake, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mistakes. Let's erase this one up here. What just happened here? If we look closer and do a before and after, you can see the eyebrows move forward. So what does that mean? This is one of the more challenging mistakes to notice again, and this is when you don't draw the facial features at the correct depth. This is mistake number 6. What is happening here is that the forehead is a round shape here, right? It's not straight down. Your forehead isn't flat. So it doesn't make sense for the eyebrows to be that far back, right? It looks almost like it's a straight line. It makes a lot more sense for the eyebrows to be over here like this. They need to be starting up here at the front. And so if I hide that layer again, you can see it makes a lot more sense. So we've basically just pulled the eyebrows out like that. And you can see that also results in this part of her face being bigger. And that points me to the next mistake. This is mistake number 3. Mistake number 3 is when you don't give enough space for each side of the eye, on the outside of each side of the eye. Now, this is very similar to the basic understanding that the human head is 5 eye widths apart, right? So you have 1 eye width in the middle, 1 eye width on the sides. But when a head is turned, a lot of people forget that rule and don't realize that you still need to have space for the other side of the face here. So I'm actually going to move our reference back up here, and you can see there is space. We need space here for the cheekbone to flow back up into the side of the head here. Let's go back out, and I'm going to show you the skull diagram again. And you can see this is where that happens. We need space for this bone to flow back up like that. And a lot of us forget to add it in when we're drawing a face that's slightly turned at an angle. So if we want to correct that, see how much further it came back out? And that required me to add a lot more space to the rest of the cheekbone here. So if you make a mistake like that when the face is just slightly turned, you can really end up skewing the overall shape of the head. If we turn our hints layer on again, we see that we've covered this dot, we've covered that one, but these two, what do these two represent? They're definitely with relation to the eyes here. This one is kind of challenging to notice. It's actually the 5th type of mistake that I find that I make quite often. And this is when you don't have the correct rotation for the eyes. The eyes should always have the same mirrored rotation. So what that means is that eyes on a face can either be straight across, or they can both be tilted kind of outwards like this, or inwards like this. But they're not ever going to be turned in different directions like that. Eyes are always going to mirror each other like this. And so what happened here is that this eye is rotated upwards like that, and I rotated this one down. So if we want to see how it's supposed to look, I can come down here and erase. You can see I rotated that back down, and now that eye is rotated back up, and now they are aligned properly. And if we want to see a little before and after here, you can see how that looks, right? So originally, if you didn't notice this, it's fine. It just means that you haven't had as keen of an eye for these types of mistakes, but it is likely that you did notice these because it's a lot easier to see mistakes in other people's work than it is your own. Now that we have the hints layer back on, we can see there's one more mistake with the mouth. And this one is pretty easy. It's one of the earlier mistakes we've already covered. Our good old mistake number 1. And that's simply the mouth being too big. This is a personal bias of mine. I am very much drawn to lips and mouths. They are my favorite feature to draw. It's weird. I love teeth. I love lips. I have bigger lips than most myself, so I'm very used to accentuating it. But there are times where no matter what the race, I do it too much. So let's go ahead and see how it should look here. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. You can see it's not that big a difference, but once you do the before and after, let's hide all the notes that we made. You can see it's still a pretty big difference here, right? Still quite noticeable. I drew on the wrong layer here. Oh well. This one is much more accurate to the original drawing, and it's more appealing looking. Now, let's go over to our last portrait of this lovely lady here. This one has some pretty obvious mistakes. So how many mistakes do you think are in this portrait? If we show the hints layer, we see that there's 3 main mistakes. Just 3. So the first one, let's go to the eye again. This mistake we haven't covered yet. This mistake is number 2. It's one of the easiest ones to notice and fix, but it's still something that can be tricky when you're drawing a face at a 3/4 view. All of these people are at 3/4 view because I find that that covers the most complexity when it comes to drawing a face. So with this, you see that the eye is not aligned with the other eye. It's a lot higher. If we draw a line here, and how do I know to draw the line at that angle? I know the vertical line for the face. And so when you have the vertical line understood, you know that the horizontal line needs to be at a 90-degree angle. It needs to be perpendicular, right? So when I know that, I can see that this eye is way too high up. So let's go ahead and erase that. And now we can see that the eye looks a lot more natural and is right there aligned with where it needs to be. So let's go ahead and note that in as mistake number 2. Now with the nose, this is a mistake that we have covered before. This is our friendly old mistake number 7 yet again. I have drawn the nose at a full profile view instead of a 3/4 view by removing the other nostril on that side. It should be showing, so it looks really weird here. Something that you may be tempted to do in this situation is move the nose further out so that it looks like it makes more sense. And that can really start to dig you a hole of all sorts of different mistakes compounding on each other. That's why I'm making this video, because I want to help you find more mistakes earlier on so that you make less mistakes later on. So if we undo that, I'm going to go ahead and erase it and show you how it should look. And there we go. We have that beautiful little button nose here, and we see both of the nostrils clearly as they should. I could make this nostril a bit bigger. There could be some adjustments I could do to make it more accurate. I'm actually going to point out a freebie here. The nostrils do tend to hang lower at the sides, as we see here, compared to the center of the nose. And this one is not quite low enough. So what I would actually do is select the nostril and just bring it down a little bit more. And that is actually quite a bit more accurate. I won't refine that now, but you can see I've even caught a mistake I didn't even catch while I was making this illustration. This one is our second to last mistake that we have not yet covered. This is incorrectly setting the ratio of the space between the nose and the mouth line versus the mouth line and the chin line. And when we say mouth line, the point at which your lips meet is the same point at which your teeth meet, and it's a very important landmark for the human face. You want to know that the bottom of the nose is also a very important landmark. The bottom of the nose meaning the center point here, not the wings or the nostrils. So what we want to do is compare the ratio between these two spaces. We can see that this one is slightly smaller than the bottom one, which is what we want, but it's not enough. They're really just too similar. So what I would do here is always have the top distance, the distance from the bottom of the nose to the mouth line, to be smaller than the mouth line to the chin, no matter what type of person you're drawing. You almost always want to have this line shorter than this one. Sometimes if they're stylized, you may want to have them equidistant. Sometimes it actually looks normal, but that still usually looks really messed up. And you absolutely never want the distance between the bottom of the nose and the mouth line to be bigger than the distance between the mouth and the chin. Never do that. That will always look weird. It will get you people calling your artwork horse face like I have. Let's just go ahead and erase this mistakes layer. You can see, oh my God, it's so much nicer, right? So now it's further up and it's further pushed out, which is a big help. So let's go ahead and do the before and after. Oh Lord, you can see that huge difference there. This one had some of the most glaring mistakes on it, right? But it looks much better now. So this is going to be number 4. It's relatively challenging to detect, and it's something that needs to be understood even when you do know this thing right here that we've all learned, where you divide the head into either half and then you do this and then you do that, right? And it's like, okay, the mouth is here, it's like 3. That's good and all, but you always need to keep this ratio in mind so that you avoid making this mistake. Now, we do have one more, and it is one of the most challenging. I have it as number 8, and I'm going to use one of my own illustrations to show you that. Here is the head for my next big illustration that I'm working on. I know it's a bit odd. It looks less scary with the shading. It's her whole head tilted down, and she has her mouth open, and she has a eyeball in her mouth, and you can see her lips are wrapping around it. Now, the problem with this is that with the head tilted down like this, I took number 8 mistake and I overcorrected. So when you open your mouth, people will often just move the jawbone down and make the face taller. That is not actually what happens. Your jawbone swings on this hinge here like this, right? So it does go down, but it also goes backwards in space. Imagine this head at a profile view. We can represent the top main cranium of the skull like this, and this is the mandible with all the teeth there. And then we have the jaw, right? The jaw doesn't just go down, it swings like this. So when the jaw is open, I'm going to redraw all of that. And what it will actually do is look something like this. So it swings down. So the height of the face does get taller than before. It would have been like this, right? But it also goes backwards. So what I did is that I moved the chin back so far that you can't even see it. A much more accurate version of this is a different drawing here. Now you can see the chin just a little bit because her head isn't tilted down so far that you wouldn't see the chin anymore. You can see how understanding the head in 3D space makes a huge difference on the different rules that apply here. Even though you should see less of the chin when you're looking from up here, if you're looking from here, you do still see the chin even with the mouth open like this. So that's something you want to keep in mind. I also realized that the teeth should definitely show, and it's much more appealing compared to this version of the head here, and it's just smaller and more human looking. When you understand that the jaw swings down and backwards like that, then you're able to understand how to draw it at the correct place. So I have that as number 8 as one of the most difficult ones to point out, because usually drawing someone with their mouth open automatically makes the portrait a lot more challenging to do. So now I want to give you some general tips about how to avoid making these mistakes in your own artwork. The first tip is obviously to flip your canvas, right? It helps you get a different view of what you're working on. But what you also want to do is flip your references. Flip both your reference and your canvas, and that will help you identify even more mistakes, because now you're looking at a reference differently and looking at your artwork differently. The next thing I suggest is that you place the hairline and the ears on the head early to keep you in check, because the hairline and the ears are 2 fantastic places to help you reference where to put the rest of your facial features. So the ear, for example, the connection point to the head is always going to line up with the eye line, the center of the eye line, right? In most styles. The hairline is going to help keep you from making all of the facial features too big or too small. The hairline is lower than the actual top of the head. And so the hairline allows me to create a sort of mask, a diagram from which I can deduce, okay, this is the cut-in point for the eyes. And then I can start to create a diagram for how the face actually works here. And I get into these shapes more often in a tutorial available on my course and in my store. And now you can see, okay, I need to constrain all the features onto the front of the face. We have this section of the face, which is at an angle, the section of the head rather, and then we have the side of the head like this, right? My last general tip is to just draw level lines as you're working on your illustrations. So I will frequently just draw a line, hold it, allow it to straighten out perfectly, and make sure that I make them all parallel so that all of the facial features are aligned. If I didn't draw this correctly, this nostril may have been up here, this part of the mouth may have been up here, right? If she's making a smirk, yeah, that might have happened, but overall, the facial features are all going to line up together like this because she's looking in this direction. And this will make sense because when you draw a simplified version of the hairline mask I did earlier, you'll notice that all of these lines will end up being perpendicular and creating 90-degree angles. And so now you can get a visualization for how the actual head looks in 3D space, right? So just drawing those lines alone without any of this extra stuff can help you a lot. And the eyebrows, of course, will follow and be parallel as well. So that's it for this little lesson on 8 common mistakes that you'll probably find yourself making with illustrations, specifically portraits and faces in your artwork. If you have any more mistakes that you find yourself making pretty often, feel free to share them in the comments. And if you're interested in the brushes I use to make this drawing, you can check them out at my store at store.ergojosh.com. It's my Ergo sketch brush, and I released a new brush pack called Ergo Chroma that I use for painting, and that is on a nice bundle right now with the entire process of my latest illustration right here called Sigma. I'm extremely proud of it. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, hit that sub button. And if you want to have some more regular Ergo Josh or motivation in your life, consider checking out my podcast called Art Food. It's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The links to everything will be in the description. All right, thank you all so much for watching. Keep drawing, keep painting, stay balanced, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Can you see how many mistakes there are in this portrait?